so good from the inside out, better than your morning would feel without. Waking the minds up, the world's up physically, mentally, spiritually, and then physically again. The first podcast in 3D. What are we doing? We're feeling so good here from the inside out. We're feeling so good objectively. Objectively, how's that even possible? Well, with the help of your only no-nonsense podcast, through the best feeling network and that body of yours, baby, from the inside out. We'll be discussing today people-pleasing and survival. We'll be right back. Part one. Herbie like. Good morning. Welcome to another Warfare Wednesday. Today is August 18th, 2021. Today we'll be talking about how everybody's just always playing for their survival. Every day, everybody's just fighting for their survival. For some, that means managing emotions of other people or themselves. And for others, that means truth and objectivity. We'll discuss how that could be and which one allows for the most freedom to love life and not fear death. Always stretching our self-awareness like a muscle this morning. Good morning, my name is Herbie. Here's Go On. We'll be right back. To place the weight of the body. Where? Down the back of the spine? Incorrect. Onto the front of the spine. Your body wants to place the weight of the body onto the front of the spine, not the back of the spine. Breaking down common misconceptions on Go On all of the time so that our body can feel so good, feel so fine from like 11 o'clock until 9. Good morning, everybody. Have you been able to feel the front of the shins? Have you been able to ask yourself if you've been remembering to remind yourself that there is no such thing as sitting on your legs? You do not, in fact, sit on your legs. You do not sit on your legs. That is a fiction that was brought onto you by the outside world, by looking at the outside world. We're always looking at here on Go On ways that our whole lives were just lied to and tricked. As we are pleased allowing all of these words to enter one ear and out the other, feeling so good, stretching our self-awareness like a muscle wherever you are, you human, you are, whenever you are, you amazing window to this godlike experience that you are. Wherever you are. Constantly observing, constantly creating metaphor, constantly establishing meaning and truth from seemingly unrelated elements of the world. You crazy window to this godlike experience that you are. Where are you right now? As you are stretching your self-awareness like a muscle and getting ready to talk about whether you are people-pleasing to survive or whether you are using truth and objectivity to survive, and why that even matters. Which one allows for the most freedom to love life? Which one would you rather do? Love life or fear death? So where are you right now? Are you brushing your teeth? Are you feeling kind of worried today? Is there something that's making you anxious? Do you feel like you need to run around? You want to shake it out. You want to shake out those arms. Just shake out those arms with me if you need to. Shake out those arms. Where are you right now? Mentally, spiritually, where are you? Do you feel lost? Do you feel oriented? Where are you? Do you feel grounded? Or do you feel somewhat in space? Do you feel lost or found? How are you today? Are you looking around at the room, or are you looking more internally? Are you looking out at the world, or are you looking more at the self today? are stretching our self-awareness like a muscle, aren't we? As we are remembering, always allow all these words to go in one ear and out the other. And remember, always, 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 please pretend that there's a candle in front of the lips, about a couple inches from the lips, that you're trying to not put out. Just pretend that there's a candle there. Just leave it there. Don't think about breathing or inhaling or exhaling. Just leave a candle in front of the lips that you're trying to not put out. And then leave your swallowing muscles alone and just observe your sense of self as you do so. Again, we want to pretend that there's a candle in front of the lips. That you're trying to not put out, and to definitely leave your swallowing muscles all the way alone. And just observe your sense of self. And how does that feel for you? Don't feel the need to sit here and patiently wait. The candle could be wherever you are, as long as your mask is there. Your face and nose and everything that your body is there. You can always be doing this. Are you in front of the mirror right now, looking at yourself? Well, isn't there still lips that you can put the candle in front of? Are you looking around at the room right now, at the bed, at your body? Are you looking up or are you looking down? Well, can't you always place a candle in front of the lips that you're trying to not put out, and to leave your swallowing muscles alone as you do so? Isn't your body always there for you? Just leave the swallowing muscles alone. They're not involved with the idea of breathing. It could be relaxed. Our feelings of breathing could actually feel more like drinking water instead of actually inhaling air. So don't think about inhaling or exhaling the way that you normally would. Just pretend that there's a candle in front of the lips that you're trying to not put out. And remember that your swallowing muscles are not involved when you breathe. No matter where you are, if you're walking, or if you feel like getting out of bed, or if you feel like chilling there. Always feel so good from the inside out. Why? Because when you feel good, and you think good. And of course, when you think good, you definitely are poised to do good. People are just always fighting for their survival day to day. People are always just fighting for their survival day to day. What do you mean, Herbie? Well, especially today around the world, they're definitely fighting for their survival. But what about you? Do you feel like do you feel yourself that you don't need to fight for your survival? I'm sure you do, right? Everybody's trying to fight for their own survival, and it feels like survival for everybody. Why is that? Well, because isn't everybody living breath to breath, and isn't every breath to breath a survival thing? Don't you only survive through breaths? So literally, aren't you every time, every minute, every moment, aren't you always just living to survive? Aren't you just fighting to survive? As in, aren't you just fighting to breathe? Don't you die every 5 minutes, but that timer is reset with a breath? Aren't we always just fighting to breathe? As in, aren't we always just fighting to get a better breath? As everything we do is defined by the quality of our breathing, is it not? When you are learning to fry food in a pan properly, is it more advantageous to be erratic, or is it more advantageous to be calm? Is it more advantageous to breathe erratically, or is it more advantageous to breathe well? As breathing is the most important thing to us, as we die every 5 minutes and that timer is reset with a breath, and we breathe more often than we eat, more often than we sleep. It's our most active action. Any action that we can actually perform on our own body, it's the one that we participate in the most consciously, that actually affects us from the inside out. It grounds the rest of our actions, our breathing, right? To be a better shot, to be a better driver, to be a better listener, to be a better everything, you must breathe better. You must breathe well. Breathe closer to as you are designed to, such that the rest of your experience is aligned and properly thought of. Okay, so we got that down, right? So we're always fighting for our survival, because for us, breathing is our survival, and we live breath to breath. So the quality of our breath is an indication of our survival. And you might say, no, Herbie, if I can breathe, I can survive. If I can breathe, I can survive. But the quality at which your breathing is improving or disimproving is going to affect your emotionalism, is going to affect your feelings of whether or not you are surviving or dying. As in, if the next breath continuously feels less and less balanced than the last breath, don't you already feel as though you are in the process of dying? Don't you already feel dead? Don't you already feel the feelings of death? Whereas if the next breath that you have can reliably be one that feels better than the last, then every breath becomes a life, as you know that it will feel better after this next breath. It will not trend towards death. A less and less balanced breath, which, since we live breath to breath, the quality of our breath indicates to us how we feel we are surviving at the moment. So how is it possible that some people could see managing emotions as something that has to do with survival? As we are always fighting for our survival, right? As we are always breathing, and breathing is related to our survival, as breathing not only is breathing necessary from day to day, from minute to minute action, second to second action, not only is your breath the one that guides the steadiness and the conviction of your actions, not only is your breath the one that defines your current moment right now and your experience with it, your relationship with the moment, but your breath is an entire body experience. There are micro movements in the toes all the way up to the crown of your head, all the way down to the toes of your feet, that are involved with breathing. Which makes sense, because your entire body literally is the body that needs to breathe. So the entire body will be affected by it. So not only is the breathing itself the thing that grounds your entire experience and what relates your experience to the entire world outside and inside, but breathing is physiologically a holistic thing and requires the entire body. It's a survival thing. And so for some, survival means managing emotions. And for others, survival means truth and objectivity. How could that be? How could managing emotions be about survival? How could managing emotions be about survival if not everybody's emotions out there are threatening your survival? How can emotions be about survival? How can managing emotions help you with survival? How can emotions be survival if emotions are not a physical thing and survival is a physical thing? And how is it possible that while some people believe that emotions are survival, there are just as many people, if not more, some varying amount of people who believe that survival is more about truth and objectivity? How is it possible that this schism exists? We will discuss today, always feeling so good inside out, as we do discuss how these two different paradigms, these two different mindsets, these two different world views could exist simultaneously, yet not know about each other so well. We're always just fighting for our survival, guys. We're always just fighting for our survival because we're breathing every day. We're breathing every moment. We're always just breathing, and breathing is related to our survival from moment to moment. How come for some, as we are always fighting for our survival, how is it that for some that means managing emotions? And how is it that for some Survival means truth and objectivity. We'll be right back to discuss. And pal, go on. Feeling so good from the inside out. Why? Because when you feel good, you think good. And when you think good, you do good. Welcome back to another Warfare Wednesday on Go On. Today is August 18, 2021. It is 5:58 a.m. Good morning, everybody. Are you ready for another Warfare Wednesday? This hump day, let's kick ass today. Remember to always allow all these words to go in one ear and out the other. As we're stretching our self-awareness like a muscle, please do not feel like you need to latch onto any words, but just the meaning as they come by, wherever you are. Self-awareness check. What are you doing right now? Are you lifting the cup? Did I catch you putting a spoon in your mouth? Are you eating some cereal? Are you cooking some eggs? Are you alone? Are you under the bed? Are you fixing the sheets? Are you calling the friends? Whatever you're doing, whatever you are doing, wherever thou art, I hope you are able to remember to remind yourself that the weight of the body does not prefer to go into the back of the spine. Nay, but rather to the front of the spine. Whether you are doing some laundry right now or you are typing away at the computer. How does that feel? Do you feel that surging within you? Whether you are playing piano, maybe you're playing piano right now. Have you taken time to remind yourself that the body is not about putting its weight into its tailbone? Nah. But rather dividing its weight distribution from the front of the spine as it delivers from the front of the spine and into the rainbow arches before it meets the sitting surface in which you're on. Indeed, not the tailbone arching backwards, but these rainbow arches arching sideways. And then rainbow arching underneath you into those sit bones. And remembering that you do not sit on your legs. As you are maybe writing down with a pen onto a paper right now. Or you are scratching your leg. Remember to keep the front of your shins in awareness as you are opening the blinds right now or driving your car. Always stay in that godlike body of yours, that window to this godlike experience that you are, as everything is defined by this body. You cannot be nowhere else but that body of yours, and that's just fine, that's just perfect, and that's just the way we like it. Please pretend with me that there is a candle in front of thy lips that you're trying to not put out. To leave your swallowing muscles alone as you do so. Just observe your sense of self. Just remember to observe. Are you remembering to just observe? Say it with me. Are you remembering to just observe? And please, one more time, say it with me. Are you remembering to just observe? We're always just fighting for our survival, guys. As in, from moment to moment, we're just breathing as well as we can. We're just breathing. Getting a little bit better at breathing. As our breathing defines how we feel about our current moment. There is no other moment but this breath that we're having as far as our body is concerned, right? Your body itself has no memory of other times other than what it feels right here and now. Yes, there might be remnants from other times that are coming back to here and now, but that is here and now. So should it not be being felt here and now, it is nowhere, it doesn't exist, right? Your body defines what is in awareness, what is in the world. So your breath defines the survival of this world. So your breath defines survival. We're always just fighting for our survival. So how come some people think that that means managing emotions? Survival? As in being approved by people, as in people pleasing, as in making sure that people aren't upset. Why do some people prioritize that as far as survival? And how is it possible that other people can prioritize truth and objectivity regardless of people's feelings? And which one allows for more life-loving? Which one allows for more freedom? Which one is more true to the human body? As we know that truisms allow for more freedom, right? So which one is true? How is it possible that both can coexist? How is it possible that managing emotions from people can be a survival thing? Well, weren't we all once kids? You might ask yourself, well, why does it matter that some people like me, and how come people care about being liked? How come people care about whether or not they have the approval of women? How come people care about whether or not they have the approval of such and such demographic group? How come people care about the approval, the emotional approval? How come some people care about pleasing these people more than they care about truth itself? Why does it appear that people are willing to abandon truth, quote unquote truth, objectivity, quote unquote objectivity, in favor of managing people's emotions? It must feel dangerous, literally dangerous. It must feel threatening to do otherwise, because we're always fighting for our survival, right? So as we're always fighting for our survival, pretty much everything's religious in that sense, right? As we're always fighting for a better breath, so we're always fighting for whatever makes our breath feel better. And for some people, that means managing emotions over objectivity. Now that doesn't seem too hard to understand, but when put into the context of wondering how people can see survival as emotionally driven, or survival rather as being objectivity driven, when put into that context instead of the context of breathing, it becomes a little bit more nuanced. It becomes a little bit more complex. But not too much further. Why is it that managing emotions might feel like survival for some people, and for others, truth and objectivity feel like survival? Mainly because of parents, because we were all kids once, right? And when you're a kid, managing emotions becomes about survival. It is always about survival because you are in the hands of a human being, not a god, not the world. You are in the hands of a human being. You later become part of the world, but for now you're in the hands of the human being because you're just this infant thing. You're just this baby thing. And when you're a baby thing, managing emotions, making sure that the people, the human beings taking care of you and their emotions were taken care of, was the utmost priority for your survival. Literally survival. If you're a caveman, or if you're in like an abusive household, if you are not making the parents happy, there is a higher chance in which you will get either neglected when they get into an argument, or you'll be left behind, or you will be treated with impatience. How many of us have been treated with impatience? How are we feeling about that today? If you're not able to make your parents happy and manage their emotions as a baby, aren't you at a higher risk of getting lower spoils when it comes, or a lower amount of spoils when there's food around, a lower amount of love given to you, a lower amount of attention and care, a lower amount of timely and satisfying care to you as a child, which can feel like abandonment which then feels like death, as everything feels like, as all forms of abandonment will feel like death to a child. And we all have an inner child, so all forms of abandonment we can understand can feel like death, because as an infant, abandonment is death. So people pleasing becomes about survival, because without people pleasing, without pleasing the people who are taking care of you, you risk all sorts of abandonment. And abandonment comes in many forms, right? Here on Warfare Wednesday on Palgo One, as we talk about the way the world is constantly choking us down with all these misconceptions. Abandonment can look like more than one thing, right? Hatred can look like more than one thing, right? Emotions can look like more than one thing as they manifest outwardly. It's much easier to look at just what's right and what's wrong, what created these emotions, rather than the emotions themselves, as the emotions are so tumultuous. They're just like so unpredictable, volatile, which is so scary as a child, because that can lead to abandonment. These emotions, these fluctuating emotions can easily lead to uncertain abandonment, which is awful, because uncertainty leads to confusion, which kids had the hardest time. All of us as kids, when we're kids on the inside, have the hardest time deciphering through confusion. It's much easier to have solid bad news than uncertain good news, in a sense, especially as a child, because you can't weed through all the nuance. You're still learning about the world, but you're still learning about the world through people-pleasing eyes. So you're not even really looking at the world yet, but you're just looking at how to please the people who are in charge of not abandoning you. And again, abandonment looks like a lot of things, right? It can look like anger. It can look like impatience. It can look like actual neglect. It can look like actual abandonment, like actual physical abandonment. It can look like physical abuse. Any kind of abandonment of love, of the proper kind of love, as in the truth without hatred and proper attention to a child. Anything that abandoned that can cause abandonment issues. So as we're always fighting for our survival, how is it possible that some people can see emotion as survival, as managing people's emotions as survival? Well, because as we were all kids, managing the emotions of your parents was all you could do to make sure that you weren't abandoned, because abandonment meant death to everybody at that age. So is it any wonder how we saw managing emotions as the first way to survive? Nothing new about it. It's a rudimentary way to survive in a world in which your entire world is defined by whether or not these people abandon you. But when you get older, the abandonment of people themselves is not what leads to some kind of doom you're not looking for. Some certain doom. Whether or not people abandon you is no longer the case of your survival. Whereas it used to be, in a very literal sense, for a child. Should you have abandonment? Should they abandon you as a child? It used to be very literal that you would pretty much be left for dead, and your experience knows and remembers this, remembers that feeling, as even being neglected or even being dealt with impatiently could feel like abandonment as a child. As you get older, you find out that there are other things that lead to more of your ability to love life and lead you away from fearing death. And usually those things involved establishing larger patterns and larger truths that are absent or devoid specifically from human emotion. Separated from human emotions, sometimes drawn wisdom from the contrasting of human emotions, rather than looking at one specific human emotion and trying to fix it like it's a problem, but rather using all human emotion as a tool to guide us towards understanding. Why would you want to understand? So that you can begin loving life and stop questioning. As questioning is always taking us away from a better breath, as well as looking for a different breath instead of relaxing in this current one. Managing emotions comes from childhood trauma. Believing that managing emotions is the key to having a happy and content, peaceful life and a successful life. The idea of managing emotions. It even has its values, but it's rooted in childhood trauma. When parental emotion could mean certain death. As in, we know that all emotion is separate away from balance. Even happiness we cannot be happy all the time, and we cannot be sad all the time. Cannot be confused all the time. Cannot be any one of these emotional states at any one time, at all the times. Because they are all just simply away from balance. So of course, managing emotions felt like survival when the emotions of people were responsible for your survival. We'll be right back after a short break. How? How? How is it possible that these two can coexist? The idea of managing emotions, believing that to be the utmost priority for survival, and simultaneously other people in the same exact world living basically side by side with these people believing the seemingly polar opposite, and that emotions themselves are simply a foreground to the actual background, which is truth and objectivity. How is that possible? Well, because the human experience transforms over time from becoming something where literally people and the way that they behave, the way that they are feeling, the way that their emotions are managed was literally controlling your survival, because their emotions could define whether or not they abandoned you, and simply abandonment was all it would take to end your life at one point in time. But your experience metamorphosizes over years and years, and slowly but surely abandonment doesn't necessarily mean death to you. In fact, a lot of times abandonment means more better for you. As they say, give the people the gift of your absence, those who do not appreciate your presence. Again, give the people the gift of your absence when they do not appreciate your presence. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. We already associate the idea of abandonment not necessarily meaning death as we get older, right? Absence makes the heart grow fonder. We hardly say that with a child, with a little baby. And we were all babies once. How would it be if someone told your parents when you were 3 days old, hey, absence makes the heart grow fonder? What kind of issues would that create? What kind of abandonment issues would that create? So when people are traumatized at such a young age by simple abandonment issues, and abandonment can mean any sorts of thing, almost mean any sorts of abandonment for a child can mean impatience. It can mean physical abandonment. It can mean physical abuse. It can mean mental abuse. It can mean using the child, using you to indulge in their own issues, desires, anything but allowing the kid, you, the freedom, yet the attention that it needed to be a child. Traumatizes these kids, traumatizes you into feeling that human abandonment is really the end of the world. End of your world, that's all that matters, right? As far as your brain is concerned, your mind is concerned. These kids, children, how is it possible that some of us in the world see survival as managing emotions and others see it as truth and objectivity is the utmost priority for survival? How is it possible that some of us coexist? Well, because once upon a time, for everybody, it was true that managing emotions was a survival thing. Is that managing people's emotions to make sure that they do not abandon you meant life or death to everybody at some point. But what happens after that? Your body gets larger, your body gets more mature, more coordinated, more able. Amazing, that body of yours. You amazing window to this godlike experience you are, creating metaphor, creating meaning. Able to open that Gator bottle or that water bottle. Able to shoot that basketball. Able to do a somersault. Able to do a cartwheel. Look at you, you amazing human creature, you amazing window to this godlike experience that you are. You later found out as you got older that abandonment did not necessarily mean death anymore. That doesn't make it any less true that as an infant, as a little baby, it doesn't make it any less true that as a little baby infant, abandonment means death, certainly. But in our experiences, in everybody's individual experience as they get older, that truth no longer becomes the truth for them, but it always is the truth for anybody in that position still when you're still a baby. You get older, but it doesn't happen completely naturally. It doesn't happen without attempted learning. It doesn't happen without effort. The switching from believing that managing humans' emotions is more important than truth the switch from going from believing that survival is about managing human emotion to understanding that survival is more about objectivity and understanding the world itself, because as you get older, no longer is your entire world defined by the emotions and moods of a person. At least someone who's not you. Your own mood? Perhaps. You conquer that thing, you got the whole world at your oyster. Or your whole world is your oyster. I think that means because it's like you're a pearl, right? So it's like if you're a pearl, then the whole world is like, it's around you. It's like, it is your home. For some in the world, as we are always fighting for our survival from breath to breath, right? For some in the world, survival and a breath to breath means managing people's emotions. Why that might be for all of us at some point, right? But for some people right now, they're living in that state, and we can all understand that state. We've all been in that state. Our body was weak. Our body was fresh and new and unable to take care of itself. Therefore, literally people themselves, other people themselves became became what your life depended on. Your life depended on these people not abandoning you, and how do you make sure that happens? Well, by managing their emotions. As we all know, the only time people will abandon things recklessly is when things are emotionally high strung. So of course, for survival, for everybody growing up as a child, we learn those skills of managing emotions like life or death, because they were life or death. But as we get older, it's no longer life or death. What becomes life or death is our ability to orient ourselves properly to the world. As you get older, how am I going to feed myself? Well, I must objectively get this plate, move it here, objectively do these things to ensure that the food is there on my plate so I can objectively stuff that food in my mouth. I must objectively get a job. I must see the truth about myself, that I must take a shower because I smell, so I can go get this job that I need. I must see the truth objectively, that the money in the world is what's going to get me, is what is going to communicate my value. And so I'm going to need this food. So I'm not going to necessarily maintain my idea of getting food if I'm just constantly trying to massage people's emotions. I mean, that might work for a little bit, but as everybody is also running on that same game of having to grow from managing emotions to truth and objectivity, it only goes so far, as everybody else is eventually playing the truth and objectivity game, as they're all literally having to feed themselves. As a child, to get yourself fed, you can manage their emotions, you can smile at them and they might give you some peas. As an adult, you can smile at somebody, but the peas still must be moved by you into your mouth most of the time. Big difference. But the difference makes sense. As when you are a baby, a child, literally your survival relies on relies whether or not on people's emotions, whether or not they can abandon you. They will abandon you based on these emotions. I mean, there's probably other factors, but as a baby, what else can you do but manage their emotions? Again, you are a baby, so you are not even capable enough in the world yet with your faculties of reason, with your physical stature, with your coordination. You are not even in a position to be able to offer anything but people pleasing, but managing emotions at that age yet. So what do? You work on those skills because you are so smart. This amazing window, this godlike experience you are. You are so smart that you end up just making great use of that time anyway. So is there any wonder why you look on the news and you see people saying, oh, people believe this, people believe that. Oh, how can they believe this and not that? Wow, how can they care about that and not this? Oh, wow, how come these people care about the truth here? And how come these people care about making sure that other people aren't offended there? How come being offended is becoming more important than this? How come the truth is becoming more important than this? Blah, blah, blah. How can some people believe that and then not believe this? And then how come their truth can be compartmentalized and fragmented and seem like they're not being consistent? How is that possible? Well, it's because we're always fighting for our survival. And for some people, that survival does mean truth, the betterment of the world. It does mean a common truth that we can all align on so that we can all work together, so that we can all flourish together, and we can have a more life-loving, survived life together. And for others, that means managing emotions because they do currently still live in a mindset in which people's emotions defines their own survival. They're not going to care about truth, they're not going to care about objectivity yet, they still care about survival. And in some people's lives, popularity is survival still because they still are traumatized into believing that people's approval literally means their survival, literally means their lack of abandonment, and whether or not they are abandoned by a group of their choice literally defines their survival because of childhood trauma, which is established by their parents abandoning them. Because as a child, when you're abandoned, you literally do die. So that stays with you. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? As in, why are there some people who... Again, why are there some people... As we're always just fighting for our survival in the world, right? In this people-pleasing epidemic, this actual epidemic, this dishonesty epidemic that we're happening in the world. How is it possible that some people are valuing emotions or the approval of certain groups over truths? How is it possible that people can do that willfully? And then people are like, are you guys just willfully ignorant? Are you guys just crazy? Are you guys stupid? Well, they're not stupid. We're all fighting for our survival. Everybody's fighting for their survival every day. As we are all breathing moment to moment to moment, we're all fighting for survival moment to moment. So if there's something quote unquote asinine or something ununderstandable about somebody's life, we must not be seeing what they view as their survival game. We must not be what they view as the conditions for their survival. For some people, managing emotions means their survival because of parental trauma, because abandonment issues actually do feel like death. Because as a child, when you do get the most abandonment issues between the ages of 0 and 3, when you have the most abandonment issues being formed in the body, it happens, they literally mean death. So is there any wonder why some people in the world are more concerned about being approved by people when that literally means their survival? And other people are more concerned about truth and objectivity as a way for humans to flourish and reach a better life-loving, survived life together. While some other people are looking at emotions. But there's no wonder, as we all were there once, where we all saw abandonment issues as death at one point in our times when we were little baby infants, when abandonment issues from our parents, which could mean a lot of things, right? Which could mean impatience, which could mean physical abuse, which could mean actual physical abandonment, mental abuse, anger. All sorts of things can be abandonment issues to a child as they feel like they are being abandoned, which means death. So is there any wonder that in the world right now, if we're not orienting ourselves properly, as everyone starts there, there's no wonder why we have swaths of people who see that truth and objectivity is the way to fight for your survival properly every day and love life for it. And yet we are still living side by side, neighbor to neighbor, with people who see managing emotions and seeking approval or avoiding disapproval how we are all living next door. They are living next door. They are living right next door. People who see truth and objectivity as the utmost priority for survival, and people who view people pleasing, seeking approval, and avoiding disapproval as the mode of survival. Because we were all there once. We were all people pleasing at one point in time. We all felt like people pleasing was life or death at some point when we were little baby child, little baby infants. And eventually you have to feed yourself the peas. We'll be right back after a short break to watch us out, to close us out. Hope you've been feeling so great in that wonderful body of yours. Please pretend that there's a candle in front of the lips that you're trying to not put out, to leave thy swallowing muscles alone, and we will be right back here on Pal Go On. You. Ooh, welcome back to Warfare Wednesday on your favorite morning podcast. How go on? Your favorite early morning podcast. How go on? Feeling so good from the inside out. Why? Because when you feel good, you think good. And when you think good, you do good. I hope you have been able to feel so great in that window to this godlike experience that you are. And on Warfare Wednesday, as we are always working towards equipping ourselves to feeling so much better in the world, to not just surviving, but thriving in this craziness that we're going through. In the way that the world feels like it's at war with you all the time, does it not? So here on Warfare Wednesday, as we're always looking to equip ourselves with some of that spiritual armor to help us make sense of the world, using our sense of the world. I want you to imagine when you see the madness in the world, when you see people getting angry, as you see them, and you might sit there and wonder, how is it possible that they're being fed this kind of information and they still aren't able to process it? How is it possible? Are they willfully ignoring what I'm saying? There's no way that they're truly this incapable of understanding what I'm saying. When you see the world reacting in such a way and you seem confused in the world, remember that we are always just fighting for our survival. And people who value approval or avoiding disapproval or managing emotions as a form of survival, people who prioritize avoiding disapproval, or rather managing emotions of people over truth and objectivity, will often show it in their anger. And what I want to challenge you to do is view these angry people, view the people when they're mad, just view them as the person who has yelled at them. As we know that anger itself is the issue, is the villain. And we know that anger and managing emotions was literally about survival as a child. What do you do when you are a child and you are being confronted with emotion that you do not know how to manage as a child? You do not understand as a child, yet you know that this emotion leads to certain death as a child. What do? You end up falling in line with this anger, doing anything you can to appease this anger, because you know whatever this anger or whatever this emotion is leads to abandonment issues, whether that be impatience, anger itself, physical abuse, neglect, jealousy, using you for their indulgences, etc., etc. Any kind of form of abandoning the love for the child. So as we saw that abandonment led to death, we would try to manage their emotions as a child. You would want to do anything you can to make sure that their emotions are managed. And so what thing do you do to make sure that happens? You fall in line with their emotions. You become just like them, so you do not feel the wrath of their anger. So what I want you to do in the world, when you see on the news, when you see in the media, when you see people getting angry, how do you manage their emotions? How do you not take it personally? How do you see their anger and see it for what it really is and not take it personally and see it as their way of surviving as they're trying to manage their emotions? Well, you look at the people mad equals the person who yelled at them. You might start to see something, because they had to fall in line with the people who are angry with them, who make them feel like the anger would be the cause of their certain doom. So you're going to fall in line. So when you see someone angry, aren't you just looking at the parents who abandoned them? Aren't you just looking at the anger that they thought would kill them, so they got in line so that it wouldn't kill them? When you see people mad, aren't you just looking at the person who yelled at them? When you see people mad, aren't you just looking at the people who were mad at them and made them feel like that anger was going to lead to death? They didn't want death as a child, so aren't you just seeing their parents? And then aren't you just seeing their parents, and then their parents, and then their parents, right? Where does it end? It ends with you. As we pretend that there's a candle in front of the lips that you're trying to not put out, and to leave your swallowing muscles alone, to feel so good from the inside out, better than your morning would feel without. This is Pago On. Thank you. For joining for another Warfare Wednesday. It is August 18th, 2021, 6:37 a.m. Remember, you can always leave your questions or comments anywhere in the comments or VODs, live or after there. Please like, share, and subscribe. It really helps us out. We want to help everybody from the inside out. Get our self-awareness moving together, guys. So we'll see you guys tomorrow for another Truth Hurts Day. See you guys bright and early. Love you guys. Take care of yourself.